Hi everyone, welcome back to the International's Guide to Academic Success. Today we are going to be answering the questions, what is a rubric and what do I do with it? Now some of you might have seen the word rubric before, some of you might know what it is, but for those of you who are not familiar with it, a rubric is basically a guide that a teacher gives you or that they use for themselves to evaluate your assignment. So I'm going to show you 3 different rubrics that I have had in the past, and I'll show you kind of what they're useful for and how you can understand these different types of rubrics. Let's get started. Okay, so this rubric was for discussion boards. I think all of you have had discussion boards in your different classes here at DBU. Not all professors give a rubric for a discussion board, but this professor did. And so what we see here is a grid. We have descriptions at the top, and then we have different categories along the side, as you can see. So the criteria, these are the different categories. You have content, that is what you say, writing style, how you say it, research, whether you've used outside research, response, this is in a discussion board when you have to answer somebody else's post, and timeliness. So these are the areas that are important to this professor. Most professors make their own rubrics, and all of them are a little bit different. So over here, we can see the point values. You have needs improvement, 8 to 11 points. Good is 12 to 16 points. Excellent is 17 to 20 points. So the maximum is 20 points, and the lowest you can get is 8. So here, for example, for the content to be considered good, it would have to fit this description. Analyzed issues, but support discussion was weak. Okay? So if you wanted the content to be excellent, then it would have to be described by this. Analyzed issues with insight and clearly supported position. Okay? So the same thing with writing style. For it to be excellent, it would have to be basically error-free, so no mistakes. For it to be considered good, some minor errors in spelling or grammar. And if there are more than 5 errors in spelling or grammar and the meaning is not clear, then she would give this 8 or 11 points because it needs improvement. Okay, so we could go down through all the different categories and it goes the same way. This professor included being on time in her rubric. Not all professors do, but this one did. So we have if the discussion occurred over 3 or more days, so she wants you to post and then wait a few days and then answer somebody else's, that would be excellent. If it occurred over a 2-day period, that's like if you posted one day and then answered somebody's post the next day, she considered that good. And then if you did it all at once, that was considered needing improvement. So she wanted you to spread it out. So this is one type of rubric. Now let's look at another one. Okay, this rubric is much bigger and more complicated than the other one we looked at, and that's because this is a rubric for a research paper, not a discussion board. So a discussion board is a relatively small assignment, but a research paper takes more work and it's worth more points. So you'll notice that this professor lined up his point values the opposite way from the other professor. So the other professor had the good ones on the right and the bad ones on the left. This professor has your A's, so 90 to 100 on the left, and your F's, 0 to 59 points, on the right. So keep that in mind. He also organized it into categories. So we have research, organization, writing, appearance, and overall impression. So for each of these categories, he gives a lot of different descriptions. So under the research category, we have questions related to sources. So no sources, not relevant, maybe less than required, exactly what's required, and more than required. So to get full marks, you actually have to use more sources than are required. Then documentation, so citing sources. So we could keep on going and see. I'm going to scroll down to appearance because not every rubric includes appearance. This professor had guidelines for the appearance. So he rated you on whether you followed the guidelines or not. follow them carefully, pretty well, need to follow them better, almost did not, and did not follow the guidelines at all. So these are the different categories that a professor can include on their rubric. Now let me show you one more. Now this rubric looks a little bit different from the others. This is also for a big paper. This was for my Developing a Christian Mind class. And in this rubric, instead of laying them all out in a grid, the professor just assigns each category a point value and then just tells you kind of that good level. So instead of describing what good looks like and what bad looks like, she just described this is what good looks like. And if you do this, you get 20 points. And if you do this part way, then you get less. So here we have the transcript, which was part of the assignment, paper mechanics, so that's grammar and spelling and organization. Then you have content. So this professor assigned most of the points to content. And so she cared about what you said, what kind of things you talked about in the paper. And each of these different areas that you were supposed to talk about in the paper were worth 20 points. So that was a quick look at what a rubric is and what to do with it. And the answer is that it's a list of requirements and it's a grading scale that a professor will give you to help you complete your assignment better. Your professor will use that rubric to grade your paper, but it's also a really good idea to look at the rubric yourself and grade your own paper before you turn it in, so you make sure that you hit all of those different categories that are important to your professor. As always, if you need help understanding a rubric or completing any of your assignments, please do reach out to the International Tutoring Team and we would be so happy to help you.